welcome back to my channel. In today's video we're going to start on this real-time full tutorial piece, and we're going to be drawing this border collie. So this border collie is from a photo that I took myself. There will be links to the photo, the outline below, so that you can follow along. I'm going to be mainly using the Faber Castell Polychromos pencils. I will try and list all the pencils that I've used below so that you can help, so that it'll help you. Don't worry if you don't have the same pencils as me, just use what you have. Doesn't have to be exact to what I'm doing. Again, I'm using the Fabriano Artistico Hot Press watercolour paper. Don't worry if that's not the paper you have. Use whatever you've got, just adjust the techniques that I'm using to the papers that you have. But yeah, I hope this will be of great help to you. As with all my pieces, no matter if it's a commission, an original piece, I always start with the eye, and that's what we're going to do today. We're going to work on the eye, maybe get a bit of the fur definition in around the eye. So yeah, let's get going. So I've just zoomed you in a bit more so that you can see just the eye. This is the outline that we've got for the eye. Got my bit of glassing paper, tracing paper to put to rest my hand on, and we're going to get started. So we're going to start with the dark sepia in the Polychromos range. No matter the colour of the eye, I always seem to start with the dark sepia, and we're going to start by outlining the shape of the eye. Now I want the eyes in my portraits to be correct. If I get them wrong, then it's at this point that I can change the portrait if I need to restart, or if I can change the shape of the eye. I don't like to get so far into a portrait and realise that the eye is completely wrong. So I'm just going to map in dark values. I'm also using a very light pressure. Don't want to press too hard yet, because again, if you want to erase something, you need to make sure you've left enough tooth in the paper that you've not built it up too much. And we're just going to slowly look at the shape of this eye. So the eye is quite oval in shape. And something that I actually find quite helpful is if you know the breed of dog that you're drawing, have a look at the breed standard, which you can find in the different countries the dog's from. Obviously this is a UK Border Collie, so I know if I go to the UK Border Collie breed standard, I can have a look at the description of the eyes. And the eyes are described as set wide apart, so obviously we can't see this eye yet, but they're oval in shape. So I know that the shape of this eye, I need to try and make it oval. It should also help if you have reference photos that aren't quite clear. You can get just ideas on how things should be shaped, what the spacing, anything like that. It's something that I utilise quite a lot. I've also not erased any of my graphite lines here because it is going to be quite dark. We don't need to. If it was going to be a light colour like we do have here, this is going to be quite light in colour. We're going to erase those lines. Just going to come up here, and then that's, so I'm just all the time just keeping an eye, flicking back and forth from my drawing to my reference photo and getting the shape of this eye correct. So you can all just see this almond oval shape eye just by getting the outside of the eye mapped in. At the same time, I'm going to start coming in, and I'm just going to start blending in ever so lightly into this corner because it's quite dark in the reference photo and I want nice seamless blends. So we're just going to very lightly bring in my shading here. And that comes down here a bit more like that. Okay, so we're getting the general shape, and this is all about layering now. So I'm just going to start going back over again. I'm using short, I guess, scribble lines. Not too focused on filling the tooth yet. Now I'm going to go in with my walnut brown this is where the dark sepia and the walnut brown are going to mix, and I'm just lightly going to add in the shapes that I can see for this part of his eye that has colour. And this is just, again, we're just looking at the shapes and mapping them in where the dark shadows are. And there's actually a dark line here, so we're just going to add that in there. And that'll blend in around there. So that just gives us our nice area where the two parts are going to blend. And then I'm going to go back in with a dark sepia, and we're going to start darkening everything up. So using harder pressure now. And as I come to the area where it's going to blend with the walnut brown, I'm just going to lift off some pressure, and that's where we'll get a nice smooth blend. So lift off the pressure as you come into where the eye meets this outside lid. Again, with the Fabriano, you really need sharp pencil points. Make sure your pencils are nice and sharp all the time, especially for the eyes. I think the eyes are the most important part of a portrait, so you really want nice sharp points there. I'm just gonna come down here. And remember, this is all with the dark sepia. Any areas that we need to really darken up, we can go in with a bit of black, but we will do that afterwards, towards the end. Okay, so I'm doing this outside lid here. It's going to be darker. Now we have applied a bit of the dark sepia here, but I'm going to actually use not as hard a pressure, and we're going to darken that with the walnut brown later on, because it's all part of the reflections. We're just going to make sure that the outside of this eye is dark where it needs to be. I am following the shape of the eye as well. So my pencil strokes, where it's coming up and over, my pencil strokes are going up and over, whereas here they're going up and over that way. It's something that I kind of do subconsciously, I guess. It's not something I'm sat here going, okay, I need to do it this way. It's just something that I do. But I guess for explaining for the tutorial, it helps for you guys to know what I'm doing. And we're just going to darken ever so slightly here. So, okay, and go back to the walnut brown. I'm going to darken up this area. Now we always say, or I mean me especially, but a lot of people say work dark to light. Now in the eyes, I tend to get these dark areas mapped in first, just because it's easier when it comes to adding the reflection. This lighter area where it's reflecting, I find it easier. Right, and then we're going to start getting some colour into this eye. So where we're blending between the dark sepia and this walnut brown, I'm actually working my walnut brown over the dark sepia areas and then coming back into this area where it's just the brown. So over the dark sepia and then back to the brown. And this is how I'm going to get that nice blend. And then I will come back in again with the dark sepia and I'll just darken up this area again, but also slowly and lightly blend into that brown. It's how I get that nice blend between the two areas. Okay, I'm now going to come in and we need a base layer. And I'm going to use the warm grey one in the Polychromos. And we're going to get this base layer across the bottom of this eye here. I'm not pressing down too hard, but it's enough that I know that the tooth of the paper is going to be slightly flattened out. I want a bit of a flatter tooth to work on. A bit more of a raise there. Okay. Okay, so I can see like a purplish red tone. So we're going to come in first, we're going to come in very lightly with the burnt ochre, and I'm going to use circular motions just to fill in. Don't press very hard, you just want it to just touch the paper, and we're going to just fill in this colour very lightly probably about a couple of layers of this colour ever so lightly. I'm then going to come in with a burnt sienna. And I can see that this is coming along here. So this is again the Polychromos. I use the Polychromos in the eyes a lot because they give you a nice translucent layers. So all the colours you'll be able to see through. So I'm blending this burnt sienna into that corner here of the walnut brown. And then we're going to bring it across here. Again, keep looking at your reference photo. Don't worry if you don't see these colours. Use the colours that you see. It doesn't have to be exact. I'm going to do it along the bottom here. See, I can see this is a more like a purple tone, so I'm going to keep the burnt sienna more to the bottom of this eye here. And I think I'm going to get that reddish purple tone by using the red violet, which I don't actually have out. Oh, it's here. So the red violet in the Polychromos, that needs sharpening. Give me 2 minutes. Okay, so I've sharpened the red violet, and I'm going to bring this in across the top of this eye here. Again, circular motions, constantly looking at your reference photo. Just where I can see those purple tones, I'm bringing in this red violet. Circular motions to build up this layer, like so. And then we're going to go back in with my walnut brown. If I can find where I've put it, that's this side. And I'm going to just start to really blend these colours around. So I'm coming from the corner of the eye down underneath. There's a little mark coming up there. And this is all about just look at this reference photo and just look at the shapes that you can see. And all I'm doing is bringing the dark area up into the light area. And I'm just looking at the shapes and just building up the shapes within the eye. I think we're going to add a bit more burnt sienna to this corner. So I'm coming in with a burnt sienna. So before I go too dark in places, I'm adding those colours that I can see. So this is the burnt sienna. Actually, I think I'm going to just come back in with the red violet. Just intensify this red violet along the top here. And over the top of that burnt sienna as well. And back in with the walnut brown. And just darken this corner. Like so. Okay, and then I am using the Van Dyke brown just over the whole of this eye. Circular, like oval movements, not quite circular, they're like oval, so it's not back and forth. It's kind of like that is the movement that I'm using to build up the layers in this eye. And then actually I'm going to come back in with the burnt ochre and just do the same, just to help blend these colours together. And then in any areas again that need to be darker after you've done that, just go back in with your walnut brown and just darken and get these nice harsh lines of the eye. Like so. Now we've got this shadow of an arm coming down the eye, and I can actually see that it's quite blue at the end, but purplish into the dark brown there. So I'm going to take my warm grey one again, and I'm just going to mark in where I can see this shape of this arm. Now I know it's an arm because it was taken at a show, so I know it's somebody's arm. So this is where the shape of this shape of this reflection is. All we're doing is looking at the shapes. So I'm going to come in at the end here. This is the dark indigo. I'm going to come in with the dark indigo, and I'm just going to lightly add this shape of the blue that I can see. And at the end here where it's going to blend into the purplish brown, I'm just going to lightly push a bit of the blue pigment that way. And then this area is darker blue, so just a bit of a harder pressure and then lighter there. Going in with the red violet again, and this is going to come from the brown, so I'm lightly where the brown and this purple meet, and then blending it over where we've done that light bit of blue, and that's going to give us this nice transition between the blue and the red violet. And then in with my walnut brown, this corner, and then lightly where that red brown transition is. I'm then going to go back with the the warm grey one, and I'm just going to use circular motions just to soften the edges. We don't want it harsh, it's very soft, so I'm just using this to soften those edges like so. So now we can go on to the reflection. I'm just going to get my Mono 0 eraser. So there is a bit of a graphite line here that I don't want, so I'm just going to take that out. And then just get my putty eraser for those edges. Okay, right, so we now have the inside of this eye to do. And this is reflecting some nice blue tones, there's some pink tones, some green tones. So we're going to get all these colours into this reflection, the highlight of the eye. So I'm coming in with the coal grey one, and I am going to use circular motions and apply this as a base layer across all of this area that's going to be a highlight. Now I want this line here to be still harsh. It's harsh in the reference photo, so we're going to work our way up to that line, but we're not going to blend these two areas together. Whereas when we come to this area, it's fine to work over it, but soften it out and it'll blend into this highlight, but we don't want this line to be softened. Again, this is just going to smooth out the tooth. Okay, and then I'm going to go in with a warm grey 5. I can see the warm grey 5 in the corner of this eye here. And we're going to work our way from the dark sepia, dark walnut brown area and pull the pigment down as we do it. So I'm working my way down, very light pressure again, and I'm just adding in this dark grey area that I can see here. And that's going to blend into a pinkish tone there. I'm actually going to come in as well with the cold, I want a cold grey tone over the top of it. We'll use the cold grey 6 very gently over the top of the warm grey 5. Again, same action, pulling it down just to give this nice neutral grey tone. And then I'm going to use the coal grey one just to blend upwards into this area. And then the coal grey 6 just to make this a nice seamless blend. So I want everything to look really smooth, because obviously this is an eye. We want everything to be seamlessly blended. We want it to look as smooth as we can. And then I'm going to keep this coal grey 6 along the top of this eye, blending from the brown downwards, like so. Let's just bring this warm coal grey 1 again. Now, you've got to be careful with how much coal grey 1 you use, because you don't want to eliminate all the tooth on this paper. But I just want this nice seamless blend. I'm actually going to use a bit of green in this eye as well. You can see a bit of green, so I have the olive green yellowish here, and I'm just very lightly, now this is a step that you don't have to add. This is going to be very subtle. It's going to be just along the edge of this warm grey and cold grey mix, but it's just going to give you that nice hint of green that is being reflected because he's stood on grass. Now on this portrait we are going to leave the background white, so you're not going to actually be able to tell that he was stood on grass. So don't worry if you just want to skip this step, you don't want to add in that green, that is completely fine. Okay, now we're going to come over here. So I'm going back to the warm grey 5. This is near this arm that we can see. There's another dark area. So we're just going to follow the shape. So I'm using curved lines and we're just following the shape of this eye. Very light pressure, and it's going to be quite dark down here as well. So all it is just constantly looking and seeing where you can see any of these darker shapes. The colours that you can see these shapes are. If you see blues, use a blue. If you see greens, use a green. Whatever colours you see, they're the colours you're using. So that's warm grey 5. I'm then going to go in with the deep cobalt green over this warm grey 5. Now we're going to have to darken up where this dark blue is, which is fine. This is a lot of like back and forth with the way that I work, just to darken up some of the areas. So that's the deep cobalt green just in here. I'm going to go back in with that dark indigo, just darken up where that line was. And that's just going to blend them together as well. I'm going to get my sky blue. This is the sky blue, because we've got a nice blue tone here. And again, I'm just making sure everything's blending into one another and just coming round nicely like so. Now there is a highlight here, so I'm going to leave that gap. And we're going to get that cold grey one, because it isn't a pure white highlight. And we're just going to bring this out, blend them. And then I am going to go in with the Polychromos white. Now if you've got something like a luminance, you can use a luminance. I probably would use a luminance or the Diluent Lightfast Arctic, but just so it's easier, I'm just using Polychromos. And I'm just going to use the white here just to blend that highlight. And then I'm going to go back in with this blue just around the edge, blending it into that highlight. And again with the white highlight. It's just a lot building up these layers back and forth till you get that effect that you want. Obviously we want this to look smooth and glossy, so that's kind of the effect we're going for. I'm just going to get that walnut brown again, just to bring this in down here. Okay, so we're going to do cold grey. Are we doing the cold grey one? I think we're going to do the warm grey, actually, here in this corner, very lightly. We're going to have to darken this arm up a bit more. Now we're going in with that warm grey. Yeah. So we'll get the red violet again. Just going to really darken up this arm. See, if you go in too hard with harder pressure, obviously it will have been dark enough straight away. But if I'd have come in with all my layers and then this was too dark straight away, I wouldn't have been able to lift it out. Whereas now I can just darken as I go along, as I add each bit. We can just darken each area as we need to and not worry that it's too light, too dark. And I'm also going to go over with the cold grey 5 in this area. And then I'm going to blend them together with the cold grey 1. I'm going over the arm just to make sure it blends in nicely. So you can see we're getting this nice blend whilst keeping this nice harsh line, which I will go back over once we've got this area in. We'll go back over. So we're going back in with the, I think I'm going to use cold grey 4. Cold grey 4 here, and we're just going to build up this colour here in the area that we've not done it. Now there is some pink tones in the eye, but we're going to leave them out because I'm liking the look of this blue and green look that the eye is creating. And there is a highlight here that I've missed, so we can add that back in after. Let me just get the cold grey 1 again, and we're just going to blend this all nicely together. Get that deep cobalt green, just going to bring this back in here ever so lightly. This is very gentle, I'm not pressing hard. If you find you press too hard, obviously I'm holding quite low down. If you hold your pencil higher up, you don't have the ability to press as hard. and that will mean that you can get a lighter touch to your pencil, and that's how light I'm touching the pencil on the paper. Just get this cold grey one down here. Okay, let's do this corner of the eye and then we can add a highlight in. So we're just going to erase this bit of graphite that I can see there, the putty eraser. Now you can use your Tombow if you want. I'm just going to lift that bit there as well. Okay, so I'm going to go in with the warm grey one in this corner as a base layer. And once we've done this, we will be going in with the black on top to really darken some of this eye up. Okay, and then I'm going to go in with, there's a nice pinkish tone. I need the cinnamon. So I've got the Polychromos cinnamon here in this corner. And I'm going to blend it downwards. And we've got the greenish tone there, so I'm going to use again the deep cobalt green. Use whatever colours you see. Again, it doesn't have to be exact. You don't have to use the range that I do. A bit of a greenish tone. And then I'm going to go over with a blue. Straight over the top of that. And that's coming up that way. And then very lightly use the warm grey 5, if I can find where I put it. Oops. And then just very lightly use this warm grey 5 in this corner. Bring it outwards, and then I'm going to use again the warm grey 1 just to, I guess, smudge in a way these colours together, but just to blend them, smooth them out. Like so. And I'm just going to come back in with the sepia here. So we are going to darken some of these edges up. Just the sepia. Okay, now we do have some highlights. And I'm going to use the slice tool here. So if you've got like a ceramic blade, use the ceramic blade. You don't have to use anything. You could use it if you're not going to sell the piece. You can use like a gel pen or a white watercolour pencil. I just want to show you how you use the slice tool. So I've got this slice tool. It keeps the blade retracted and it's a curved edge. And what we're going to do is hold it like a pen, hold it on its side, and we're going to just ever so slightly turn it when you use it. Now, it's easy if you turn your paper the way that you're going to drag the piece of paper, but just for the tutorial, I'm just going to use it like this, and it's just going to scrape away. You don't want to press too hard, but when you've got enough layers, it's just going to scrape away that top pigment, and it's going to leave you with that highlight there. And I can bring this highlight into the eye if I wanted. If I wanted a bit more of a highlight here, we can just scrape away that pigment, and you can see how we're getting this nice highlight in the eyes. And then, because I've taken away too much of the pigment, you can then come back with your cold grey 1 or whatever colour you've got and add it. As long as you've not damaged that tooth, you are fine. So we're going to come back in now with the black, and we're going to just darken up some of these areas that are really dark. So that's mainly along here. So we're going to do along the top here, the eyelid. And this is going to really see where I'm going to look, and I'm going to go, okay, the top of this eye needs to be darker. So we might need to darken some of that brown, probably with a sepia. We'll just go in with a sepia just to really darken the top of that eyelid. Because obviously this eyelid is covering the top of the eye, so we don't want it to be too light. It needs to be dark enough. I'm just going to do along here a little bit. That corner's quite dark, and this corner here. Okay, so I'm just going to grab my sepia. And I'm just going to go straight in with the sepia, just mix in with that black and just drag it down into this eye, just to darken the top of this eye. Then the final little details, we've just got some flicks coming down the eye. I'm just going to add these in over the top with the dark sepia. Right, so we're just going to add some of the shape around this eye just to really set the eye in place. So I'm going to go in first. Again, we're going to use the warm grey one as a base tone. I'm just going to lift some of this graphite. I don't want it to be as prominent as it is on this bottom eyelid. Right, so we're going in with the warm grey one as a base layer. Okay, now I'm going to first off start with the Coal Grey 6. And I'm going to use this along that bottom there here. So it's like a triangle shape that I'm just adding with the Coal Grey 6. Just going to grab my black because we want this to blend in. So very small strokes just to blend into that Coal Grey 6. And then bring up the Coal Grey 6, and I've darkened that because it is a nice dark area. Got my dark indigo just along this edge. Now these are very subtle lines that I'm adding. So like I say, this is how I see my work, as very subtle lines of colour. So you don't have to add as subtly as I'm doing. If you just see a grey colour, add a grey. So I've then got the Coal Grey 3, and I'm just going to use the Coal Grey 3 as this base layer. Well, not base layer, like a secondary layer on top of this warm grey one. Blending everything together. And this is going to blend down into the fur. So obviously we've got a bit of fur coming off of this eye, which we will have to add, but that will probably be the next part. And then got the warm grey 5. I will have the warm grey 5. Put it down, you can never find the pencil you want. Okay, warm grey 5. From the corner of this eye. And then it comes down. So I'm following this curvature. Now it's important that you follow the curvature of the eye. It is quite smooth looking here, but we still need to follow these natural curves that you can see. Like so. I'm just going to blend that back up a little bit. I'm going to bring this warm grey further down the eye to about there. Yeah. And get the dark sepia again. And I'm just going to blend these very gently. So you can see just how short my pencil strokes are. It's not the biggest eye. And we've got a lot of colour in there already, a lot of detail. So it takes time. It does take me a while to build up the colours that I want, but I like the effect I get. So we've then got Payne's Grey, and we're just going to bring this down here. So this is a nice bluish tone. Go over that warm grey 5. Now I can see that reddish tone again on the bottom lid and a bit of a bluish tone here. So I'm going to add this sky blue. Just here, it's like a highlight, very lightly. And I'm going to add that red violet along this edge. And that's going to blend into this fur nicely, is that red violet. Then get the warm grey 1. And I'm just going to blend just this highlighted area where the blue's been added and the red down here. Get that warm grey 5 just into this corner again. And we have the bottom eyelid in. Now it's quite rough and ready along this edge here, but we're gonna get the fur is going to be joining the eye here. We're just going to do the top of this eye, so we're going to bring this warm grey 5 up and over. Just keep an eye on the shapes that you see. This is all this is just the shapes that I'm seeing, and that's all I'm adding. I'm just going to get the warm grey one. A nice lighter area. Now this area that of the warm grey one is probably going to end up quite dark by the time we've got the black fur in, but because we've not got the black fur in, I don't want to go too dark just yet, so we're just going to very lightly, I think I'm just going to add the coal grey 3 very lightly, because it's going to end up darker, and I know it will end up darker, but because we don't have the fur in around it to suggest just how dark it needs to go, just going to stick to the coal grey 3, which is a nice light tone if it's light enough, but if we need to go darker, we can go darker. And that's just going to go into the fur. Okay, so we have an eye. So what's next is that we will add the fur, a bit of the fur around the eye for a bit of context. Now we have the fur's going in quite a lot of directions on this. It's going down here, up and across the nose, across the head. So it's going to be one where you will have to really concentrate, focus on your reference drawing, and make sure the fur direction is going the correct way. Now, as a base layer for the fur, I'm going to use the coal grey one. And I think the fur is going to mainly be used up with the coal greys, the dark indigo, the Payne's grey, for this black and white dog, which sounds funny, it's a black and white dog. There will be areas where we use the black pencil, but we are going to build up some of the layers. So we're just going to use this coal grey just to show where the fur's going, and I'm looking at the reference photo and I'm following the fur direction. So it's coming round here, and then it's coming round, and then it's curving again here. So you're constantly looking at the fur direction. Now we're mapping this part in just so we've got an idea when we come back to doing this eye, the direction that this fur is going to go. Now I've not rubbed out this pencil line because we are going to be using darker colours, so it'll get hidden. Again, my pencil lines are very light, so do bear that in mind when you've done your outline. You don't press too hard, press quite gently. And then this bit of the fur is coming up and over, so we're just going to do this up. That's coming up and round like so. As you start adding this base layer, you'll really start to see this eye just sit in place nicely. When you've got that bit of fur, you've got that context, really does help, I find, rather than just being a floating eye. Like so. So I think we'll do a little bit of this fur just so that you can see how it's going to go, and then we will do the next part in the next tutorial. So I've got the cold grey 4, and I'm just going to bring this down again, just constantly looking at the reference photo. Bring this down. Now I can see so many colours in this fur. I can see greens, I can see purples, I can see blues, but I'm going to try and not use as many colours just to keep it as simple as I can for you. So I'll try and stick to just like the blue tones, maybe a few purple tones, but I won't go overboard with the green. I do like to add a lot of colour in my work. If anybody's seen my work on Instagram, on my Facebook, on TikTok, wherever you see my work, my website, you will know that I like to use a lot of colour. I use lots and lots of colours within my work, and it's just colours that I've just come to see within the fur that the fur's reflecting. Okay. And again, I'm just constantly following this fur direction. I'm not pressing hard, light layers, but I'm just following the fur. And pencil strokes are fairly long. It's not, border collie fur isn't short, it's like medium in length. So I'm not using huge pencil strokes, but not tiny strokes either. And then I'm going to come in with the dark indigo. And this is where you'll really start to see the blue. And this is more along the bottom of his eye here. Now this will depend on the paper that you're using. If you're not using a paper that can take a lot of layers, you may not be able to get as many layers as I'm doing. So I'd do maybe a scrap piece of paper and have a test. How many layers can your paper take before you run out of tooth and it won't accept any more layers. This is the Fabriano and it does accept a lot of layers, so I can just keep adding and adding and adding. And I know not everybody has this paper, so I would recommend you do a test first before you add all these layers. Okay, I'm then going to use the Payne's Grey. So this is where we're going to start really darkening it up. So I'm just going to apply a little bit more pressure in areas. It's going to be a bit darker, like the corner of this eye. Still following that fur direction. Curving it around. Now I can see I want some purple in here. Not just in that corner, but we'll see. Just keep adding these. Coming around here. So all I'm doing, I'm adding like these bluish greys to build up this black fur at the moment. It's not quite black around this eye yet. It is got a nice bluish hue to his coat. Sorry, I hope my fingers haven't covered too much of the camera this whole time. And I have been trying not to, but I'm sorry if I have covered a lot of the work. Do let me know, and I'll look at doing a different way next time we do a recording. I'm just going to come back in with this Payne's Grey and just build up this layer. Now this, if you have like the Derwent Lightfast Mars Black, that'd be a nice colour to use before you go straight in with black. Especially with that bluish tone that it has. But experiment, you don't, like I say, you don't have to use the same colours I'm using. Have an experiment, have a look at the reference photo, see what colours you can see. Maybe you'll see more colours than I do, or less, that's perfectly fine. Right, I'm just going to come back in with a red violet along the bottom of this eyelid. And I'm just going to blend this into the top of this fur here. I'm going to get that warm coal grey one. Just going to blend. So I can see that this part of his eye probably needs to go darker. Now that we're building up the Payne's Grey area there. So I'm going to get the warm grey 4. I'm just going to darken along here. Blend this into the fur. So this is warm grey 4 blending into this fur. And I'm getting this natural connection between the eye and the fur along here. I'm just going to darken along the top of this eye lid here. Okay, I'm going to get my black because this bit here is black, so I'm just going to darken there, and this black bit comes down here, so you can see how much darker this fur needs to go. And we're not quite there yet with the Payne's Grey because it isn't pure black in this area. There isn't actually any pure black in this part of the fur around the eye, apart from here with like a nice dark shadow. So back to the Payne's Grey, and it's just going to be keep building these layers. So I'm pressing a bit harder now because I know where I want this colour to go. See, along here, if I was doing this as a commission, I would be adding some green in here. and maybe a bit more blue in here. So you could go back in with a dark indigo. Go back in with a dark indigo, darken it up with a dark indigo, then back in with your Payne's grey. If it goes too blue, sorry, use a warm grey 5 or 6 to tone it down. So now we can see that this highlight of the top of his eyelid needs to be darker, which I expected would happen. Just going to darken here again. Blend that. So there's going to be quite a bit of the red violet coming back in to blend down here. I'm going to get the dark indigo. And I'm just going to use that along here. Okay, I'm going to get the warm grey 5. I think I'm going to use this warm grey 5 very gently, just where this highlight is going to be. Blending everything together. So I'm always looking for a nice seamless blend. So that means me working over the top of other colours. Like so. And then we're going to get the Payne's grey just in the top of this eyelid here. So I'm not going to go too dark yet because we want to start introducing more of the fur around this eye. I'm just going to add a bit more of this Payne's grey. And down here, again you can see how the fur is changing directions all the time. And we've built up a nice bit of fur there around this eye. So yeah, I hope this tutorial has helped. If you have any questions, do let me know. If there's anything you want me to improve upon for the next part of the tutorial, again, let me know. The next part, I think we will do a bit more of the fur around the eye, but I do want to move on to the nose. I want to be working from right to left. So we'll work that out when we get to it, whether we just keep doing this eye, maybe do this eye, this part of his face, and then his nose. We've got some nice transitions between the white fur and the black fur. We've got whiskers and we have the mouth to do. So we've got tongue, teeth, which is one of the reasons I picked this photo. So yeah, I hope this has helped. Even if you don't want to follow along, you've just picked up some little tips and tricks that I've maybe said. Please like, follow, subscribe if you want to see more. So I'm hoping to do this as a weekly tutorial. Each week I will upload the next stage of the tutorial, which I hope gives you time to follow along, do your part, get in touch with me if you've got any questions. So I hope this has helped. Please like the video, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Bye everyone.